ABC's George Stephanopoulos says it was a mistake to donate to the Clinton Foundation, but questions about his credibility aren't going away. Emily Rooney takes a look.
For George Stephanopoulos, covering the Clintons has always been a little awkward. He came to ABC News after playing a prominent role in Bill Clinton's White House.
Did the potential labor secretary violate the labor laws?
But widespread doubts over his objectivity have diminished, as Stephanopoulos has steadily risen at ABC to become the network's chief anchor.
From ABC News, This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
And now, Stephanopoulos routinely covers his former employers without much fuss.
Clinton Cash, the man at the center of the latest campaign firestorm, is here.
Case in point, this recent interview with Peter Schweitzer on his new book alleging that Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, did favors for foreign donors of her husband's foundation.
I would question that. To argue that
based on what? Based on what?
Well, I think based on her track record. Do you have
any evidence that she actually intervened in this issue?
No, we don't have direct evidence, but...
But wait. After that feisty interview, we learned that Stephanopoulos himself is a Clinton Foundation donor, giving $75,000 since 2012. And Schweitzer wasn't the first time George has covered the foundation.
Is that the project you're most excited about this time around?
Now Stephanopoulos is apologizing for mixing charity and journalism.
Those donations were a matter of public record, but I should have made additional disclosures on air when we covered the foundation. And I now believe that directing personal donations to that foundation was a mistake.
So far, ABC News is standing by their man. But one shoe has already dropped. Stephanopoulos will not moderate the network's Republican primary debate next year.
So Politico went back after this story hit and looked at donations made by a bunch of individuals and entities connected with the media. And I should mention, for the sake of disclosure, that Public Radio International, which is owned by WGBH, gave between $10,000 and $25,000 at some point. I'm not sure entirely what year that was. Might have been before WGBH acquired PRI. But there were some other big names that gave a lot more money. Carlos Slim, the chief shareholder of the New York Times, gave between $1 and $5 million. Ditto Newsmax, the conservative website, Reuters. What do you guys think of this?
Well, first of all, those names that you're listing, publishers, owners, those types, always have given money to various groups and organizations when individual journalists are not supposed to do that. Second of all, what was George Stephanopoulos thinking? He is so closely associated with the Clintons. And he didn't just give $200 for Haitian earthquake aid. He gave $75,000. The thing is, this might not have been that controversial a contribution a year or so ago, but since the beginning of this year, when we've had report after report of foreign governments using donations to the Clinton Foundation to curry favor with Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, I should say that's
the allegation.
That's the allegation. I want to make that clear. For him to sit down and grill Peter Schweitzer the way he did without disclosing his own interests was just unconscionable.
But even before that, I mean, the Clinton Foundation does do good works, as do many charities. George Stephanopoulos had a lot of options for where to give his donations. This is a red flag with red flags waving off of the red flags. I mean, there was no secret that Hillary Clinton was thinking about, going to run for president. George Stephanopoulos earned back, I think, a fair amount of trust. If there was early skepticism about whether he could be an objective political journalist, he's earned back trust, but not that much trust. And nobody can go there. And he's not such, is he so exalted that he is free from the rules of journalism ethics? I'd say no.
Any defenders here of Stephanopoulos?
I'm afraid not. I'm really surprised that he's still in the anchor position. It seemed to me that the interview on Clinton Cash was, the step too far, was the bridge too far for him, and I just don't understand how, having apologized, we don't realize that is not enough for.
I thought it was sort of a half-hearted apology, too, myself, which kind of showed he just didn't get it.
For those of you who
ABC has to back off.
All right, Kelly, you're his last hope.
No, having worked at ABC, and I know the hoops I had to go through to be a regular citizen, I wanted to contribute to a local campaign here in town. I had to go to the top. And trust me, I didn't have $75,000. And I never covered politics. So I didn't cover politics. I didn't have $75,000. and I had to go to ask permission to do that. And it was with great reluctance that the powers that be said, okay, that's it, you know. I said, all right, because, you know, it'd be public. So I think for him, particularly with his connections to the Clinton, this was bad. I do want to make a distinction, though. He's been criticized for leading conversations and debates, not for the network, but, you know, just serving as a moderator, as many other media persons have done from other networks.
You're
Jake
talking about
Tapper,
for the Clinton Foundation.
For the Clinton Foundation. I don't know that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, except in his case, maybe a hyper focus on the fact that he had that past relationship, maybe not him. Somebody else from ABC did that. I don't see what the problem there is, but the cash thing is a problem.
Let me ask a closing question then. Jay Rosen tweeted, the problem for ABC now is that if George Stephanopoulos can't moderate this Republican primary debate that he has pulled out of, how can he cover the campaign going forward?
And let me,
how can he?
He's the managing editor of ABC News. He may be an anchor on the morning news and host their political Sunday show, but he's also in a position where he's supposed to be able to Bigfoot everybody when there's a big
Not
story.
Not supposed to, does.
And does.
Yeah.
And we're heading, you know, the presidential campaign is underway. I mean, the question you raised, the answer is obvious. I don't see how we can. And, you know, his value to ABC News has diminished substantially as a result of this.
Yeah, but I will say they like him, and when they like stars, nothing happens.
They clearly do, but here's the question: you know, what happens to this week? What happens to? You're right that the presidential campaign is going to only become a larger issue as the year and the next year go by. So, if they're scaling him back, how far can they scale him back?
And can he do something besides being an anchor once you're an anchor?